Emperor Valens had a choice: wait for reinforcements or risk everything on one decisive battle. He chose glory over wisdom, pride over patience. By sunset on August 9th, 378 AD, his body lay trampled in Gothic mud, his empire in flames, and his Christian subjects wondering if God had abandoned them. But sometimes, the greatest victories are born from the most devastating defeats. Welcome to Legacy of the Holy Cross, where Orthodox faith, Byzantine history, and sacred tradition are brought to life for the modern believer. In 1453, the walls of Constantinople finally fell. But what if I told you the Byzantine Empire never truly died? Today, millions of Orthodox Christians carry its legacy without even knowing it. In the next 15 minutes, you'll discover hidden truths about your faith that will transform how you worship forever. Before we explore the sacred architecture that shaped Orthodox worship, claim your free Byzantine Heritage Guide. 7 symbols that transform how you experience divine liturgy. Click the link in the description. It's free and takes 30 seconds. What you're about to witness is one of history's most catastrophic military defeats, yet also one of its greatest lessons in resilience. This isn't just another battle story. This is the moment when the ancient world died and the medieval world was born. When Christianity became the backbone of imperial survival. And when the Roman Empire learned that sometimes you must break completely before you can rebuild stronger. The year 376 AD found the Roman Empire at a crossroads. For over a century, barbarian tribes had pressed against Rome's frontiers, but something different was happening now. The Huns, those terrifying horsemen from the steppes, were driving entire populations westward in a massive migration that would reshape Europe forever. Among those fleeing were the Visigoths, a proud Germanic people who had lived beyond the Danube for generations. These weren't raiders seeking quick plunder. These were families, entire communities, perhaps 200,000 souls seeking refuge from the Hun terror. Led by chieftains like Fritigern and Alavivus, they approached the Roman frontier not as conquerors, but as desperate refugees. The irony is striking. The very people who would soon devastate Rome initially came begging for sanctuary. Emperor Valens, ruling the Eastern Empire from Constantinople, faced an impossible choice. His advisors painted 2 stark options: allow these barbarians to cross the Danube and risk internal chaos, or refuse them and potentially face their combined wrath alongside the Huns. Valens chose what seemed like pragmatic compromise. The Goths could enter Roman territory, but under strict conditions. They would surrender their weapons, provide hostages, and accept forced relocation away from the border. But here's where Roman arrogance met barbarian desperation. The officials charged with managing this massive refugee crisis were corrupt, incompetent, and cruel. They sold the Goths' own weapons back to them at inflated prices. They forced Gothic families to trade their children for dog meat. They turned what should have been a humanitarian operation into a systematic exploitation that would soon explode into violence. The Gothic leader Fritigern, despite being officially a Christian convert, watched his people suffer under Roman mismanagement. When local Roman commanders invited Gothic chieftains to a peace banquet and attempted to assassinate them, the mask of cooperation finally fell away. The Goths rose in rebellion, and suddenly, Rome faced not a manageable refugee crisis, but a full-scale barbarian uprising within its own borders. This is where we see the first fatal decision that would lead to Adrianople. Instead of containing the Gothic revolt while negotiating a sustainable settlement, Valens let pride override prudence. Reports reached him that his nephew Gratian, Emperor of the West, was achieving victories against barbarian tribes. The family rivalry between the 2 Christian emperors would prove more dangerous than any external enemy. Valens marched from Constantinople with an army that represented the flower of Eastern Roman military might. 35,000 men, including the elite Scolae Palatinae cavalry and the crack legions that had defended the empire for generations. These weren't green recruits, but professional soldiers who had campaigned across the empire. Yet they were marching toward a trap that would consume them all. The Gothic forces had grown beyond their original refugee numbers. Fritigern had united not just the Visigoths, but also Ostrogoths, Alans, and other barbarian groups into a confederation bound by common grievances against Rome. More critically, they had maintained their cavalry advantage, something Roman intelligence had catastrophically underestimated. As August 378 approached, two armies converged on the plains near Adrianople. Valens, despite receiving messages that Gratian's western forces were approaching to support him, chose to fight alone. His advisors were divided. Some urged waiting for reinforcements. Others pushed for immediate battle to claim sole credit for victory. The emperor's vanity made the choice for him. What we just uncovered represents exactly why I spent 2 years researching and writing From Byzantium to Today, the philosophical bridge to modern Christianity. This isn't a typical ebook. It's an 80-page academic exploration featuring 13 comprehensive chapters full of reference material. From the Cappadocian Fathers to Byzantine legal codes that still influence modern law, from women's hidden influence in imperial Christianity to the philosophical exchanges between Byzantine and Islamic thinkers. This scholarly work connects every historical moment we discuss to your modern Orthodox faith. Church leaders, seminary students, and serious Orthodox scholars, consider this essential reading. Click the link in the description and get this valuable academic resource. The morning of August 9th dawned hot and cloudless. Valens positioned his army in the traditional Roman formation that had conquered the world. Heavy infantry in the center, cavalry on the wings, reserves held back for the decisive moment. The Gothic forces had arranged themselves in a defensive circle of wagons, their families and possessions protected behind a wall of shields and spears. What happened next demonstrates how catastrophically Roman military doctrine had failed to adapt to new realities. The Gothic cavalry, far more numerous and mobile than Roman scouts had reported, was away foraging when the battle began. Fritigern, displaying tactical brilliance that rivaled any Roman general, used diplomacy to buy time, sending envoys to negotiate while secretly recalling his horsemen. The Roman attack began with confidence. The legions advanced in perfect formation, their shields locked, their spears leveled. For a moment, it seemed like countless previous victories over barbarian rabble. The Gothic wagon circle began to waver under the disciplined Roman assault. Then, disaster struck with the speed of an avalanche. The Gothic cavalry, led by Alathius and Saphrax, struck the Roman right flank like a thunderbolt. These weren't the light horsemen Rome was accustomed to fighting. These were heavy cavalry, armed with long spears and protected by mail armor, fighting with the desperation of men defending their family's survival. The Roman cavalry, caught between the returning Gothic horse and the defenders in the wagon circle, broke almost immediately. In medieval warfare, once cavalry fled, infantry became vulnerable to being surrounded and systematically destroyed. This is exactly what happened to Valens's army. The collapse was total and horrifying. Roman formations that had stood firm against Persian heavy cavalry and Germanic warriors crumbled as Gothic horsemen swept around their flanks. The emperor himself, fighting desperately in the center, was struck down. His body never recovered from the field. Some accounts say he died in a burning farmhouse where wounded Romans had sought refuge. 2/3 of the Eastern Roman army died that day. The Scolae Palatinae, the empire's elite guard, were annihilated. 35 generals fell alongside their emperor. The military infrastructure of the Eastern Empire, built over centuries, was destroyed in a single afternoon. As one contemporary chronicler wrote, "It was a defeat so complete that not since Cannae had Rome suffered such catastrophic loss." But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. The Battle of Adrianople, while devastating, did not destroy the Roman Empire. Instead, it forced a transformation that would ultimately make the empire stronger and more resilient. The crisis revealed that Rome's old military system, dependent on citizen legions and barbarian auxiliaries, was obsolete. The Christian empire that emerged from this disaster would be fundamentally different from the classical Rome that died at Adrianople. The Byzantine cross we see throughout Orthodox churches. You can wear this sacred symbol with our Byzantine cross collection. When you understand its meaning and wear it with reverence, you're carrying 1,500 years of Orthodox power. Click the link in the description. The immediate aftermath was chaos. Gothic forces ravaged Thrace and Macedonia, approaching the very walls of Constantinople. The capital's population, swollen with refugees, faced starvation and siege. Yet the city's defenses, strengthened by Constantine decades earlier, held firm. More importantly, the Christian Church provided organizational structure and moral leadership that secular institutions had failed to maintain. Emperor Gratian, now sole Augustus, made a decision that would reshape imperial history. He appointed Theodosius, a Spanish Christian general, as Eastern Emperor. This wasn't just a military appointment, but a recognition that the empire's survival depended on new strategies, new alliances, and new sources of strength. And Theodosius approached the Gothic crisis with revolutionary pragmatism. Instead of seeking the total destruction of the barbarian confederation, he offered them what they had originally sought: land, legal status, and integration into the Roman military system. The Federati system, where barbarian tribes served Rome while maintaining their own leadership and customs, became the foundation of late Roman military organization. This transformation reflected deeper changes in Roman identity. The empire that emerged from Adrianople was explicitly Christian, drawing strength from faith rather than classical tradition. Military campaigns were blessed by bishops. Soldiers fought under the Chiro symbol of Christ. The empire's mission was redefined as defending Christianity rather than expanding Roman territory. The Gothic crisis also revolutionized Byzantine military strategy. The theme system, which would dominate medieval warfare, had its roots in the post-Adrianople reorganization. Instead of maintaining expensive professional armies, the empire began granting land to soldier farmers who could be rapidly mobilized for defense. This created a military system that was both more cost-effective and more resilient than the legionary system that had failed so catastrophically. The psychological impact of Adrianople on Christian consciousness was profound. The defeat was interpreted not as God's abandonment of Rome, but as divine chastisement for imperial sins. This understanding motivated both moral reform and military innovation. The empire that had grown complacent was forced to rediscover the militant faith that had originally sustained its Christian transformation. Within a generation, the Gothic crisis had been resolved through negotiation, integration, and military adaptation. The barbarian tribes who had destroyed Valens' army became the backbone of Theodosius's forces. Former enemies became defenders of the Christian empire, their children intermarrying with Roman aristocrats, their leaders rising to positions of imperial authority. The Battle of Adrianople teaches us that even the most catastrophic defeats can become foundations for renewal. The Roman Empire that emerged from this crisis was different from what came before, but it was also stronger, more flexible, and more enduring. It would survive for another 1,000 years, defending Christian civilization against wave after wave of external threats. For Orthodox Christians today, facing their own challenges of cultural displacement and institutional weakness, the Adrianople crisis offers both warning and hope. It reminds us that survival requires adaptation, that strength comes through faith, and that apparent disasters can become opportunities for transformation. The Gothic crisis wasn't just about military tactics or political maneuvering. It was about a civilization learning to draw strength from its deepest beliefs while adapting to new realities. The empire that died at Adrianople was resurrected as something greater, something that would preserve Christian culture through the chaos of the medieval world. As we face our own uncertain times, the lesson of Adrianople remains relevant. Sometimes we must lose everything we think makes us strong before we can discover what truly sustains us. The Roman Empire learned this lesson in blood and fire. From the ashes of that terrible defeat, the greatest Christian emperor would rise to build a foundation that would endure for centuries. If you want to understand how crisis shapes character and how faith provides strength in impossible circumstances, make sure to subscribe for more Byzantine military history. And if you're interested in the complete analysis of how Christianity transformed imperial military strategy, check out our From Byzantium to Today ebook. Next week, we'll explore how Theodosius built upon the ruins of Adrianople to create the most powerful Christian empire in history. Transform your Orthodox understanding today. Download your free guide now. Deepen your knowledge with our ebook From Byzantium to Today. And wear your faith with our Sacred Symbols collection. Your spiritual transformation starts with action.